Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Welcome back to the Mom Show. Today, my guest is a dear friend, and it's obscene how long we've been talking before we got into the meat of the show. But that's what I'm doing right now. And I think that's where the Lord is leading. And I shared that with you, LaVerne, and I'm sharing it with the audience. I really think that God is just like, let's get some mamas together. Let's talk. Let's mentor each other. Let's do life, because this platform gives us the opportunity to do that with people across state lines, across global lines, for us to come together and build a community where we're seen, we're heard, we're understood, and we don't feel alone.
Mm.
And you do that so well. You do that in a ministry that you've been running. How many years now have you been running Free to Be Real?
Free to be real, it's in its 11th year. Yeah,
Wow.
the Lord really put that in my heart in 2014, and in 2015 that was our first year that we did that.
I love it. I do get Free to Be Real confused. My sister teaches children with disabilities dance, and their dance program is Free to Be Me. And so
Oh, I love
sometimes
that.
I know, isn't that so sweet? And so sometimes I'm
Yes.
like, wait, which one, Laverne or Gretchen? So I get it confused, but it is precious. Tell me a little bit about you, Laverne. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay. Well, my name is LaVerne Vest. I am a mom of three amazing young men. I have one that just turned 20 in January and two other boys that are twins, and they'll be 18 in March. In August, I'll be married 22 years. The last 2 years, I have been in a separation from my husband. And so it has definitely been a different way of life, these last couple of years. But just because God is silent does not mean he is absent. And
Mhm.
so, though there have been moments where I ask God what he is doing, I know that he's definitely working.
Mhm. Do you want to share with us what led to the separation in the marriage?
I'll share a little bit. I won't go into deep details because I think that
Mhm.
that is, part of my husband's story and part of my boys. My husband has struggled with pornography addiction throughout the almost the entirety of our marriage.
Mhm.
There was a season where I do believe that he was clean, but he fell back into that, and that had a ripple effect, and it led to other things. So it then led to our separation.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's such a hard position to be in. You're not the first woman that I've talked to who has been in a similar situation where, their spouse has been in some form of addiction. In your case, it was pornography. Um, and as a woman, in that relationship, it's so easy to live with guilt and shame and fear. How have you continued to maintain your faith and maintain your position, your
Mm.
identity outside of what was happening in the marriage relationship?
I don't think it's always possible to live from that place of freedom and identity
Mhm.
and clarity, because when you are living with someone on a regular basis and they have struggles, of course that affects you.
Mhm.
But I do believe that you have to figure out that what they do doesn't have to become the way that you live.
Mhm.
So in pornography addiction, what I've learned over the years is that there is a lack of connection. A lot of times there's some chaos that comes with that. I mean, there's just layers of things. And in
Mhm.
and in my case, years ago, um, I really decided, it was a decision, it was a choice, that I'm not going to live this way, and that my home would be a place of joy, that my faith was going to become the thing that really anchored me, and that I was going to create a space where what he struggled with did not overtake what we were building, if that makes any
Mhm.
kind of sense.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to put those boundaries up and to know what a blessing and a gift that is to your children
Mm,
who, you know, they're they're 18 and 20 right now, but you said this has been the majority of your marriage. And so
Mhm.
that's that's such a mom thing to do,
Mm.
to build those safe boundaries for your home, because that's where your children are growing up,
Mm.
and they're seeing this. I would assume they were not immune to what was happening. They may not have
Mm.
known all the details, but kids are smart. They
They
know.
are.
They know things are happening. We talked a little bit before I hit record about just relationships in general. And I feel like because you have been in a relationship for so many years, that has not been easy.
Mm.
Um, you have also taken that pain and you've used it to mentor other women. You've done this in your ministry with Free to Be Real. You've been this mentor for so many women and you've heard so many hard stories that women are struggling with. And one of the things that you and I were talking about before this is the difficulty that we have as women in finding those trusted relationships and those mentor women that we can go to and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Women who are trying to find connection and community and friendships. Why are women having such a hard time finding good friends and being a good friend? Let's talk about both of those.
Let's talk about both of those. Okay, so I think culture definitely has a part to play in that. I mean, I like a good Real Housewives reunion, just like most other women, because it's loud and it's chaotic and it's crazy. And you kind of sit there and just think, is this really kind of the way
Right.
that they live life? And I think that does something to us, right? I mean, there's some
Mhm.
excitement in that. And I think that that has affected us. I think that the things we watch, the things that we allow ourselves to partake in,
Mm.
it affects us. And I think that women, we are not immune to comparison and envy and jealousy and all of those things. I think the enemy uses in his tool belt, right? Because those are things that we are prone to. And so we have to be very, very careful about the way that we approach our relationships and understand that the relationships that God gives us, they're to build the kingdom, right? But the enemy also
Mhm.
has a counterfeit to that. And
Mm.
so when we don't see our relationships for what they are, which is a way to advance the kingdom, a way to build the kingdom, and we kind of lose sight of not just our marriages or the way that we're discipling our kids, but just our friendships and our relationships with our sisters, our relationships with our mom and our mom in law. All those are important relationships that we have. And in this day and age, those are crumbling, they are breaking off.
Mhm.
You know, people are being ousted. There's a whole thing, you know, where parents are, I'm trying to think of the word that people use now, where basically you kind of shut out your parents
Oh,
or
yeah, the
your in
cancel
laws.
culture with
Yeah, the whole
your
cancel
family.
culture. I mean, my
Mhm.
God, what are we doing? So I think there's
Yeah.
so many layers to relationships. Women relationships are super difficult just because of how we're built.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. Yeah, you're so right. This cancel culture, and I I may step on toes here, but I kind of think that this generation of kids who are living in this cancel culture, especially now it's shifted to family relationships. Of course, I 100% believe that the enemy has been attacking relationships. I mean, he's been attacking marriages. He's been attacking relationships for many, many years,
Mm.
um, dividing us and pulling us apart. Let's circle back to our community, our friendships. How do we build the friendships that we need, we long to have, and that God created? God created us to not be isolated, to not be alone, but to be in community, to love one another, to serve one another. And somewhere along the line, that's being destroyed, and
Mm.
I think it's our responsibility to rebuild it, to fix it.
Mm.
How do we do that? What does that look like for women?
Even when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about the garden, right? Genesis. We go back and God created relationship right there, and immediately the enemy attacked
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
And then they're exposed. And of
Mhm.
course, they're sewing fig leaves, right, to try to cover up when they had the most amazing comforter and cover up in the Lord. And I still think that we have that today. I think so much of our lives we're trying to sew fig leaves and cover up but when I think about free to be real, we talk about Revelation 12:11 and Galatians
Mm,
5:1. Revelation 12:11 says we overcome the enemy by the blood of the
mhm,
Lamb and by the word of our testimony.
mhm,
There is something about being vulnerable and transparent in relationship. I
mhm.
think when we can be so vulnerable and so authentic and bring things into light, I think that's where healing happens. But then we have to reciprocate. So when someone's being vulnerable, we have to be very intentional about listening,
Mhm.
and not trying to fix, not trying to come in and rescue, but just listening. Sometimes having someone just listen, there's studies about it, what it does to the brain, how it affects us internally. So I think that we have to take into consideration that there's something to be said about
Yeah.
speaking and bringing things into light, but then we have to do a duty as the other side of that and listen and hold things in a way where we protect people. I don't know that that comes naturally in this day and age, where we protect
Yeah.
people's stories, where we are able to hold what they're sharing and cherish it,
Mhm.
even maybe if we don't agree with it. I remember one time we were in a circle and a woman shared something very, very vulnerably, and another woman, this was not her experience. And I can't go into too much detail, but it
Yeah.
wasn't how she saw something. And so after that, there were some things that she had gone and said, and it really hurt the other woman that had shared so vulnerably. And so I
Mm.
think that we have to realize that just because our lens or our perception of something doesn't align with another person's story or the way that it's going about, that doesn't mean that we can run and go and share. uh, that we still have to protect that. I
Right.
do believe
Yeah.
that we have to cherish and protect people's stories. I think it begins
Mhm.
there.
Mhm. Mhm. And be willing. I think so often, like what you said, we want to fix versus listen.
Mm,
And a lot of times somebody's not needing a fixer. They're just needing a friend. They're just
yes.
needing a friend.
I think that a lot of our relationships, it's just discipleship upon discipleship, right?
Mhm.
As we're doing this together, this is part of discipleship in relationship, in friendship, in community. This is being followers of Jesus. I mean, I just think
Mhm.
about Jesus in his circle. He had this great, amount of people that followed him, but then he had his 12 and then he had his three. And I think that we have to have that as well, because that's part
Mhm.
of discipleship. That's part of growth. That's part of mentorship. And that's where transformation comes.
Mhm.
I
That's
have
it.
5 or 6 friends that we are very, very close. In fact, I think it was 2017, 2018, we had known each other, most of us, for years and years. But that particular year, we decided we're bringing our friendship to a whole other level.
Okay.
And we had gone to a conference in Dallas, and we rented a house together, and we just laid it all on the table. We, we shared some very, very deep things. We talked about hard things. We cried, we snotted, and there was a level of intimacy that we
Mm.
allowed in that moment that we probably hadn't had before. And since then, we've been very intentional. So, every month we have a dinner together. We try to celebrate one another's wins. We have a group text. We did Marco Polo for a while. There's always ways that we're trying to create and foster that intimacy and that vulnerability. And all of us have gone through deep, deep, hard things. And we've tried to hold space for one another, not fixing. Yes, we
Mhm.
have our opinions, and yes, sometimes we'll share them, but it's more about just loving one another where we're at.
Mhm.
But that has taken time, it has taken intention, it has taken tears and talking.
Mhm.
And all of that did not just happen overnight. It's something that we've had to foster over
Mhm.
gosh, 7 years now, though 8 years now, though we had been friends, very close friends for years before that.
It was that intentional moment of let's do this different and on purpose.
Mm,
That yesterday our pastor was preaching on love, and he was preaching on agape love, and he was like, love isn't always a feeling. Agape love isn't a feeling at all. It's a
mhm,
choice.
mhm,
And so you're saying that because he was talking about God's love is not normal, and he's not calling us to love in a normal way either. He's
mhm.
calling us to love abnormally.
Right.
And that abnormal love is choosing to love someone even if they've hurt you,
Mm,
choosing to serve others and not expecting to be served in return. And what you're saying, as you were saying that, I was thinking y'all had a friendship. Y'all are choosing to do life different. You're choosing to be vulnerable with each other. You're choosing to love each other at a whole other level
mm.
than where it was before, and that takes work. I think a lot of times also in relationships with women, we get busy.
Oh
We get
gosh.
busy. We're busy with our kids, we're busy with work, we're busy with whatever we have going on, and we forget that maybe our friend needs us to reach out, or maybe we need to show up, and we let that relationship then begin to suffer, and then feelings start getting hurt. Well, she didn't even call me,
Mm,
or she doesn't even know what's happening in my life anymore. I've been
mhm.
there. Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty of doing that, and thinking that somebody, well, maybe they just don't care about me, and it's not that they don't care, they're busy, or maybe they're experiencing something. So it goes back
Yes,
to us being mindful and not just isolating in and saying, fine, I'll just do life alone, but being
for sure.
mindful and being participatory.
Mm.
You have to participate in a friendship and in a relationship, and be the friend that you want them to be back. It may not be your people. I love what you and your friends did when you said, hey, we're going to take this to another level.
Brene Brown has this thing that she talks about, and I'm probably going to get it completely wrong, but she says that in her relationship with her husband, they come in, and I think what they share is, hey, I've got 80% to give today. And then,
Mm,
if she says that to her husband, he may come back and say, well, I've got 80% to give today. So, man, they're doing life and all as well. Well, the next day, they may come in and one of them has 20% and one has 10%. And so that means expectations are going to be really low. We're not expecting much of anything from one
yeah.
another. And I think that we kind of have to approach our friendships like that too. We have to gauge where people are, because I
Hmm.
remember there was a season where my particular friend group, most of us were carrying some really hard things. And so to
Hmm.
show up for one another really looked like, this is what I've got going on, and it's really hard. And so we were able to encourage one another, but not to the depth I think that in other seasons we were able, when maybe our capacity was a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Because bottom line, I am a high capacity person. I can do many, many things, and I can do
Hmm.
them well, and I can do them for long stretches of time. But what I've realized, especially over these last 2 years, is that your capacity can be stretched thin. And
Hmm.
I have caught myself, I'm a mom that's kind of on it, you know, not
Yeah.
bragging, but I'm a good mom. And over these last 2 years, I have found myself asking my boys, what did you say? Can you say that
Mm.
again? It's probably a little bit of perimenopause, but it's also
That's a
it's
podcast for another day.
right. But it's also, it's not just hormones, and it's the weight of what I've been carrying these last 2 years. It's
Hmm.
affected me mentally. It's affected me in a way that my capacity is a little less than it usually is.
Yeah.
And I've shared that with my friends. I'm not who I usually am right now. And they have allowed that. And I think that is part of being in a beautiful friendship too, is allowing one another to grow and to wane in our
Hmm.
weaknesses, and then to undergird during those times, and not to demand a lot when we can see that someone's not doing well. And it's not that I'm not doing well and that I can't do things, but man, I just have an emotional weight on me that it's hard, because I'm not just carrying my emotional weight. I have three
Yeah.
sons. We've got a business. I've got a ministry. There are other things that I'm also doing. And so my friends have expected very little of me, even when
Yeah.
we go out to dinner and stuff. It's usually, I'm kind of talkative and all that. I found myself being a little bit quieter, a little bit
Hmm.
more reserved in our group chat, not because I don't want to be those things, but just right now, I just don't have it in me.
Hmm. Hmm. I totally, I can totally relate. I feel like I'm the same as you, as far as I think we're very similar personalities. I can do a lot for a lot of people at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm always juggling a lot. And when my parents died last year
Mm-hmm.
was probably the first time that I was just like, I am drowning and I cannot come up for air. And so I
Right.
was different. I've been a different person, and I've had people who expected things from me and then realized I cannot do that anymore, and I've had to just be like, I'm sorry. I just I can't, some days I haven't been able to form a thought. It depends on where I'm at in the grief journey, which of course feels like it's just a never ending journey because it's just all, there's always a first, there's always a
Right.
this. And so I can relate to that where sometimes you just are like, I'm present, but I'm a little checked out.
Hmm.
And or actually, I say checked out, but I had a conversation Friday with a pastor. And we were talking, and I made a comment about checking out. And he goes, I don't call it checking out, I call it checking over.
Mm.
I've checked over to this because that is taking precedence in my life right now. I'm still available to this, but I'm just this is what's at the top of the list. And I was like, okay, yes, I'm not completely out on that. I'm just
Right.
it's just on the side for a minute and we're checking over.
And I think that what happens is if you have found your identity in ministry or in doing or in showing up as the perfect mom or as being a certain wife, if you found your identity in those things, when something happens to impact that,
Mm,
you kind of crumble. And it's
mhm.
almost not only are you struggling with grief because of the loss of a parent or because separation of marriage or whatever, now you also have this identity struggle because if you're
Yeah.
asked to do something and you have to say no, then well, what will people think or how will people respond? Because well, I'm not who I usually am. One of the things that I have so realized over the last couple of years, but these 2 years especially, is that I really have found my identity in Christ because I've been
Mhm,
able to say no to a heck of a lot of things and
mhm,
without justifying, just no, that's not for
mhm.
me. There have been a few times where it was hard because I wanted to explain, and it's like, no, no, just let the no rest. It's okay to
Yeah.
just say no and let it rest. And so, part of what I have really been enjoying is God, I really do have my identity in you. And I'm
Yes.
not having to work through all of these other things on top of what I'm carrying
Mhm.
because of where I have centered myself and where I find myself resting or finding refuge or finding comfort.
Yeah, man, that is so true. I love that you said that because I do think that it is so easy for us, especially moms, to lose our identity in the title of mom, in
Mm,
the raising of our children. I think that's why so many women struggle when their kids leave for college
mm,
or move out. Then all of a sudden it's like, who even am I? And
mhm,
what am I supposed to do with myself now? Because my whole world has been wrapped up and these kids, I've got some sweet friends that are doing great ministry work with empty nesters. And
mhm,
it's because that's a whole ministry in and of itself.
mhm,
Moms losing their identities. And
mm,
so, it's not the message isn't always great when you hear people say, wow, this trial has really helped me find the Lord or find my identity, because I know that what you have experienced over these years with your marriage and the past 2 years of this separation that's been so difficult, I know that you would not wish that upon anybody. But life is hard and we
mm,
go through hard things. And I think that having that established relationship and that foundation, if we don't have that, when the hard comes, everything is crumbling. At the bare minimum, have that foundation so that when the hard comes, what's happening is that foundation is actually, as the hard is happening, the foundation is growing
mm,
because God is showing you, I am here for you. I am
mm,
showing up for you. I am supporting you. I'm
mm,
sure through the past several years, you have been like, with a free to be real. I mean, your ministry is let's be real. Let's share our testimonies and our hardships. And you're like, but wait, I don't want to have to do the hard thing
mm,
too. Like, can I get a break on that? And God's like, no, I'm going to use your hard
mm.
because your heart is where we're going to build a foundation, not only in your relationship with me, but in what you're doing now, which is you are opening your story and your heart and your wisdom and what you've learned to other women. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now.
You know, as you're sitting here talking, I'm brought back to a phrase that I heard it several years ago, and it applies to Free to Be Real because what we do in my ministry is story tell. We just get regular, everyday, average women, and they just story tell. And
Mhm.
in that, they are sharing the good news, the hope of Jesus, right? And so, one of the things that I heard a couple of years ago said that your been through is sometimes another person's breakthrough. My
Mm.
mom used to say growing up, I don't want you to have to go through what I did. Just take my advice. And I would say, I want to do my own thing. I want to make
Mm.
my own mistakes. What my mom was saying is, hey, I've been through this, so you don't have to. Like, you can just run on past that and not even worry. And
Yeah.
I was just young and dumb, right? And so I think obviously what we do through Free to Be Real is we're hoping that our been through will be someone's breakthrough, or they don't even have to go through it. They can just run on
Mhm.
past it. Part of what I've been doing for years is mentoring women, and women come sit on my couch and they gather in my kitchen and we just talk because there's something beautiful about being in a safe space. I have one friend, she calls me the vault. She was like, Vern, you are a vault. And it's
Mhm.
true. I hope to be that, but I also hope to point women to other resources. If it's counseling or therapy, maybe it is a Bible study. I was a part of Bible study fellowship for 10 years. I was 5 years as a group leader and then 5 years as a teaching leader. And that particular tool that the Lord allowed me to have in my tool belt grew my relationship at an accelerated rate that I would not have had if I hadn't been a part of that Bible study.
Mhm.
So I also see myself as a bridge because I've had the privilege of being able to be a part of so many different churches and women's groups and different things, that there are so many resources that I'm now aware of. And so being
Yeah.
able to sit with women and offer those up or share with those, that gives them an opportunity to choose whether or not they will take those. And so that
Mhm.
mentoring has become a little bit more centered around betrayal trauma now, betrayal
Mhm.
trauma and broken trust, because I've seen what it does to women. I've been in
Mhm.
groups over the last couple of years where that's the whole point of what we're doing. And women need safe spaces where they can talk about really hard, difficult things. Charles Spurgeon has this great quote, and he says, the belly of the fish was Jonah's college. The
Mhm.
Bible tells us over and over, you're not going to stay on this milk. You shouldn't be staying on this milk. You got to eventually start to,
Mhm.
eat the hard food. And I think all of us can't stay in kindergarten and elementary. We've got to advance. We've got to go to high school and college. And part of going through high school and college, per se, in our spiritual walk is going through these hard things. So, though
Mhm.
I hate what we've gone through, especially for my boys in particular, I believe that this has been a part of my college, learning some things that I would have never chosen. But I had a man
Mhm.
say to me probably about 10 years ago, and he said, you will minister from a place of reality, never from a place of theory. And in that
Mm.
moment, I was like, wow, thank you for that. Now I look back and think, Lord, I want to minister from a place of theory. I don't want to minister from a place of
Right.
reality
Right.
because some of this is really, really heavy. It's really heavy. But what I have learned is that I'm not to carry this heaviness. If I am
Yeah.
carrying it and I am feeling the weight of it, then I have
Mhm.
shifted into a posture where I am trying to rescue or save myself. I can
Mm.
feel the weight of something, but if I am carrying it, I've got to offload. That's Jesus's to carry. So
Mhm.
anytime I am feeling the weight or I am feeling overcome by something, I have to ask myself, what posture am I in right now? And it's,
Mm.
oh, I'm carrying this and I'm not supposed to. Okay, Jesus, this is yours. One of the things I share with our team regularly, I'm sure I heard this somewhere years ago, but Ephesians 6 makes it so plain that our fight is not with flesh and blood.
Right.
And then it, commands us to take up our armor. And one of the things that I ask our team is, you wouldn't get up out of bed and go about your day naked.
Mm.
You're going to put on some things, right? For
Yeah.
women, we're going to put on our under things, and then we're going to put on a dress or, jeans, a shirt, a jacket. And that's the same thing that we have to think about every morning when we get up, because we are going to encounter things with family, friends, out in our work. But we have to be armored up. And so you have to put on that full armor every single day, just as you get dressed. Yeah, because the enemy's sneaky. He's
Mhm.
really, really, he's a con man, isn't he?
Mhm.
One of the things I think Dr. Henry Cloud touches on this in his book Boundaries, but also I had the privilege and the honor of being a part of a group. And the woman who was leading this group talked about how we're two houses as a husband and wife. And she just talked about how we need to take care of our house. And I really didn't understand what that meant. And so I really took a journey with the Lord in 2025. And I said, Lord, unpack this for me. And I think in the church, we are told that two become one when you're married,
Mm.
right? You know, your husband and wife are going to leave and cleave together. And there's a beauty to that. But there's also something to be said about our identity in Christ. I'm not going to stand before the Lord with my husband beside me and give an
Right.
account of his actions, and he's not going to do that for me. And so I think that we have to be very cognitive and mindful of how we're taking care of our house, our temple. The Lord calls this our temple.
Mm.
Indwells, indwelling of the Holy Spirit happens in this. And what that looked like as I really started to think about it, I thought of Adam and Eve in the garden, and they were cultivating something together, right? And that's what happens in our marriages. We don't get married and then move into one house. We are two houses on the same land that we're going to
Mhm.
cultivate. We're going to cultivate a garden. And if there are things going wrong in my husband's house, every time I run over and try to fix and clean out his closets and dust his cobwebs and all the things, then I'm leaving my house unprotected. I'm not taking care of the temple, the house that the Lord has given
Interesting.
me. So I
Mhm.
think it's very important that when we think and we talk about marriage, that we understand that not everyone is in a relationship where they feel like their partner is that
Mhm.
person in the booth next
Yeah.
to them. Sometimes I'm cultivating land with someone whose house is really broken, but I have to
Mm.
stay in my house and I have to make sure that taking care of my house looks like, dealing with my issues,
Right.
making sure I'm in the word, making sure that I'm with a community of believers who can really push me along and help me. So I was just thinking as you were talking about that, such a beautiful picture of what marriage should be. But I understand also that some women who are sitting here listening may not find that in their marriage. And
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
encourage whatever one woman, I really feel like right now that there's a woman just thinking, like, gosh, this is so hard. I just want to say to her, keep cultivating your house
Mm.
because you're going to cultivate that land, that garden with the Lord when your husband's not okay and he's in a
Yeah.
place that his house may be crumbling or there may be areas that he's really going to have to clean up. I want to encourage the woman to just keep doing what you've always done, which is consistently praying, getting up, getting in your word, having a community of people that you can talk to and trust with those hard things that you
Mm.
feel weighing on you. I don't know why I said that, but I just really
I'm
felt like
so
that was
glad you
impressed
did.
upon me.
No, I'm so glad you did.
Marriage is
Oh,
hard.
sorry.
Life is hard.
Mhm.
I always wonder what it would feel like if I didn't have the Lord as my anchor, rooting me in place because gosh, I just feel like I would feel so untethered and there would be so much chaos that would come with that. So my heart
Mhm.
always breaks for people who struggle to know the Lord for who he is because
Mhm.
I can say with an assurity that I would not have been able to carry the joy and the peace and the intention that I have carried if it hadn't been for the foundation that we have built together. And we are still firming it up every day.
Yeah.
I'm, 20 plus years deep in my walk with him. And the more that I grow, the more that I want to know him because I realize his character is what sustains me. And looking back and seeing his faithfulness,
Mm.
I can move forward because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, he had me there. He had me
Right.
here. I'm going to keep going because I know he's going to meet me here and there.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's what's so amazing about a relationship with him is because it is a relationship.
Mhm.
This is the the epitome of the relationship that we can long to have even with those here on earth where he has served us in a way that nobody will ever serve us by going to the cross.
And
And
I
then
miss it. I miss that. Like some days, like you're talking about, you feel bad. I am that woman that misses it because though he
mhm.
has been so faithful in the past, in the moment, sometimes I am so overcome with grief or
Mhm.
with the pain of my situation that I cry out, where are you? What are
Mhm.
you doing? Especially when it comes to my children. I think a mama and
Mm.
her bears, a mama and her cubs, there's something very, very, I think it mirrors the father's heart for us, right? That
Absolutely.
deep love that mamas have and dads too. but there is a beauty to a mama's love that I definitely think replicates the father's heart for us. And when my kids are hurting because of XYZ, that is when I am most on my face, like, Lord, you have got to show up. What are you doing? It is
Mhm.
when I bring my anger to him and my
Yeah.
questions and my doubt.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I have it all together, and oh, I have this peace and this joy. And I never have those feelings of grief or
Yeah.
overwhelm, because they definitely come. But the Lord quickly spanks my butt and gets me right
Mhm.
back where I need to be,
Mhm.
which is in alignment with Him, in that posture of, okay, God, I know that you have me. But sometimes, yeah, I can be hard headed, and He's got
Oh,
to
yeah.
spank me a little harder some days
Oh,
than
yeah.
others, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Look, girl, you're preaching to the choir on that one.
I don't want to be that stiff necked person in the Bible that they talk about who doesn't learn, and
Yeah,
then God's
I
like, oh,
know.
out of here.
Oh
uh,
my goodness. It's been such a joy to sit with you and have this conversation. One of the things that I ask at the end of every show is there something you're praying for that we could join you in prayer? And do you have, I know we've talked about several scriptures, but do you have a scripture that you could leave us with?
oh gosh. So I am praying for something. It's something that's been on my heart for years and years. And it's a part of the ministry that I'm always doing. And so I won't go into great big details, but pray that God would give me wisdom and discernment, clarity of mind around what this looks like and how to steward it well. In the beginning of 2026, sometimes I get a word, sometimes I get a phrase or whatever. And this year, the Lord gave me 3 words, and it was surrender, it was stewardship, and it was strategy. And I thought, okay, God, I don't know what this looks like, but more and more, He's kind of building that picture for me. So I need lots of prayers on,
Yeah.
stewarding this well, because I want to be someone who stewards the things of the Lord well.
Mm.
And then I think that the scripture that I want to share goes back to when that guy spoke that over me all those years ago about, you're going to be a person that speaks from a place of reality, not theory. And in that, he talked about Joseph's life. And he asked me if I knew the story, and I did. And he said, well, do you know Genesis 50:20? And I said, I mean, I don't know it right off the top of my head. So I'm going to read it from the NLT, because I just think it's beautiful. But I think that everyone should read Genesis 50:20 in every translation. And it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. Genesis
Mm.
50:20 is one of those beautiful reminders that God is always in it. God's going to use
Mhm.
it. What the enemy intends for harm, here comes God,
Yeah.
to speak a different word.
That's good. So good.
Mm.
Thank you so much for leaving that with us. I appreciate it. And thanks for your time.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, I truly believe that there is a woman listening to this podcast at this time. And the Lord is really saying to her, hey, I've got you. Just keep tending your house. Keep doing what I've called you to. Don't take your eyes off of me. And I just, it is impressed upon me, because I have been that woman where when I look around, everyone else's marriages look like X, Y, and Z. And my husband and I have had a good marriage, but
Mm.
it was affected by a lot of things. And so I had to keep on keeping on in the midst of all of the trials and the hurt and the pain. And I just want to say that to whatever woman is listening right now that needs to know, God has got you. What the enemy is intending for evil or harm or whatever it is, God is writing another word. He is author, He is creator, and He has the last sentence, period, over whatever story it is that He's writing.
Mm. I know she's hearing it. And I pray that she receives that and is encouraged by it. I know I am. I'm encouraged by your words and your wisdom. So
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your time, Laverne. You're the best.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers. And in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube,
Be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.